I wanted to take a moment to discuss our class project that we'll be doing over the next 10 weeks. Through this class, we are going to be creating an organic environment in the Unreal 4 engine, which should be pretty obvious given the class name. But I wanted to go over some of the other points that we want to hit throughout this class that I want to make sure each and every one of you accomplishes, so that you can keep these in mind when planning what your environment will be. We're going to want to see reference breakdowns from each student on demonstrating their knowledge of how to break down a piece of reference image into assets that they can use to create a modular organic environment. I'm hoping to see planning examples of how you've planned out your environment through like a reference sheet, maps, top-down views, concepts, and a simple blockout. Students will also need to demonstrate their knowledge of the Unreal terrain system as well as the foliage system to help build this environment. Students should also plan to have a heroic rock sculpt. This will be extremely beneficial as it will be a 360-degree rock that can be used many times throughout your environment. It can help build up large sections of any one given space and then blend it out so you can't see the tiling with smaller assets. This rock will also demonstrate your ability to create an asset in either ZBrush or Mudbox and then bake it down. Students will also be required to create at least 2 rocks that utilize tiling textures. Tiling textures are huge when it comes to environment art creation. Not everything can have a unique one-to-one texture, so creating 2 rocks will get you used to the feeling of creating assets that utilize not only tiling textures, but blending textures as well. Students should also look to create 2 versions of the same type of tree. When you create one tree, it can take quite a while. So being able to utilize the original tree you made, changing up the canopy, some of the branches, can help speed you up getting a lot of variation in your environment by creating 2 versions of this same tree. Students should also plan to create 2 points of interest in their scene that can be the focal points for your final renders in your portfolio. We want these to be really nicely detailed out and feel like they have a story and that connect your scene together. Students should also plan to create some man-made assets to incorporate with their organic elements. This will help give students an understanding of how to bridge the 2 together so that they feel connected even though they are very different. If you're not going with man-made assets and you're going with a fully organic environment, we'll try and look at different ways to incorporate things like how animals would interact with your environment to still give those story moments. You don't want just a flat, boring environment because those will just get looked over quite quickly. Students will also be required to light their scene in the Unreal 4 engine. Hopefully you can give it a great mood that really draws the viewer in. All students will be required to create high quality renders of their scene. I'm looking for multiple views so you can show that you know how to make a living, breathing environment and not just one shot that's really interesting. In a video game, you're going to be running around an environment, so you can look wherever you want. This is why we want to have multiple views for our high quality renders. We will also be requiring asset breakdowns, so you can show that you know how to present clean work on how you made your assets. This is a huge benefit when studios are looking to see if you know how to make the assets at the required level that they are seeking. Now, I'd like to give you some project tips to keep in mind for when deciding what your environment can be and how you're going to go about building it. Know your skills. This is a big one. You really should know the quality level that your skills are at right now. People in this class might be coming in who have just gone through the basics, and some might be well-experienced veterans. Now, you want to know your skills so you don't bite off more than you can chew. You can complete this entire class within 10 weeks. I really want to see everyone be able to go from the start of the class to the end. It's never fun when you get to like week 5 and then you have to drop out because you're just like, well, I don't have enough skills to get this done in the time that I planned. So know your skills. That leads into the next point. Keep the scope reasonable. Creating an environment generally takes a lot of time. It might seem pretty easy from the get-go. You're like, oh, I'm gonna place some rocks, I'm gonna throw some trees in there, and then maybe some grass. It's never like this. It always takes a lot of back and forth, a lot of time creating these assets that fill up this world, that makes it feel like it's an actual place and not just 2 rocks and a tree. So keep the scope reasonable. Try and figure out what you can make in 10 weeks. Readjust your scene after your initial block out. Now, everyone has a great idea of what they want to build, and they're going to be like, this is it, I got it, it's solid. Then you go to your block out and you're like, this isn't working too well. Some of these things are a little bad. Maybe I need to rethink my entire plan. And that's okay. If you need to, this is the best time to do it. You're not locked into anything yet. You haven't created a ton of assets. And readjusting here will be much smoother than trying to readjust later. It'll also allow you time to see like, hey, can I finish this scene? Can I not? What am I missing? What do I need? Readjusting after your block out will help answer all these questions. So don't be afraid to readjust. Prepare to add to your scene later. As I said before, creating an environment takes a very long time. Now, 10 weeks is actually not a lot of time to make an entire environment. If you look at some of the work I've done for like Uncharted 4 or Uncharted The Lost Legacy, those environments were spent over the course of generally a year. Granted, we were working on other sections as well, but to get a scene up to this quality can take months at a time. So make sure that you're going for quality assets in there and then you get the main picture done so that later on you can go in and add those extra little details that'll help really set your scene apart. Don't get caught up in sculpting for days. This one can get even the best of us. You get into your sculpting program and you're like, all right, I'm gonna make this awesome rock. And then 2 days later, you're like, I am still sculpting this one rock. Watch out for that. Try and set yourself a time limit of how long you should spend sculpting something. Now, if you're working like a character, well, those can take days, but anything for an organic environment, generally you don't want to be spending days at a time sculpting. If you are, you're probably wasting some time. Keep man-made assets small. Now, we want to bring man-made assets into our environments as they can give a lot of great storytelling moments. We want to be able to understand how we're going to incorporate these man-made assets into our organic environments. But we don't want to get caught up in trying to create a huge, large city that is unmanageable and infeasible to do. So you want to keep them small. Keep it like a small little gate, a burned down house, maybe just like the outer frame. Small things that will help draw story elements to your scene, but not take up all of your time to actually build. Reuse quality assets from previous projects. Now, this is a huge one. It's used all the time in the video game industry. Once we make a really nice set of grass, I'm not going to remodel this set of grass every time for every new game. If it's up to the quality level that I need, I'll just reuse it. Sometimes I might just retexture it or maybe adjust the model slightly. If you have assets that are of good quality and you can use in your previous project, this can really speed up the time to actually build a large-scale environment. Now, the key is good quality assets. If these assets are really weak, then you don't want to use them. The reason for that is redoing them can give you better knowledge on how to build these assets better. But if they are at a high quality, the amount of knowledge you'll gain from building these assets again and again is relatively low. That way you can spend time focusing on something new. Quality over quantity. This is a big one, and another reason to tie it in to keep the scope reasonable. You want a quality environment, not a massive one. It's easy to just get caught up and be like, oh, I'm gonna make this huge open world that everything can happen, but then everything feels really cheap and chintzy. Nothing has a lot of detail, nothing has that quality that you would see in a AAA game. We want quality environments here, not really big environments. So remember, just focus on something that you know you can do in the set amount of time really well.